Bihari Gopi Janabalaba Giri Baradari Jai Gopi Janabalaba Giri Baradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Oh. Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Paravajakacharya To Tadasata Shri Shri Mad His Divine Grace A. C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda
Jai.
Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki
Jai.
Sam Beta Bhaktivinoda Ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari
All
Bol.
glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to assembled devotees.
Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Thank you,
Om
Maharaj.
Namo.
I just want to introduce real
Om.
quick before we start. Sorry, Maharaj, because sometimes we
Okay.
get right in the class, so not everybody knows. But His Holiness Chandrasekhara Swami Maharaj is a very dear disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and it gives us great pleasure to have him on our program this evening. He has dedicated his life completely to the propagation of Krishna consciousness all over the world in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. And he is our very dear friend. He has come to our home many, many times and graced it with his wonderful classes and lectures for many years while we were living in the New York area and other places. And he has been responsible for inspiring quite a few of our friends in Krishna consciousness, and we feel especially grateful that Maharaj has agreed to come on our channel here in the Towaco, New Jersey channel to talk on a very intriguing topic that I was always looking forward to hearing: the loss of truth. Loss of truth. It's so pertinent because there's fake news and so many other things going on, who to believe, who not to believe. And so I'm really, really looking forward to this class. So thank you once again, Maharaj, for kindly coming to our channel, and we look forward to hearing from you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Thank you for inviting me. Oh, glories. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam yena bhutale swayam rupaka damayam dadati swapadantikam vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganat Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Eshvari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasati Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hi. So thank you all for tuning in today. And today we're going to talk about the loss of truth. Wow, you've got a really healthy, hefty gathering here, 40 people. That's great. You've really done some amazing stuff here, Manan Gopal.
And we have 10 on our 11 on our YouTube right now live. We got a total of, yeah, about almost 55 connections.
Yeah. Somebody's on the chat saying my sound is low. Is that he's talking about me or he's talking, yeah, probably he's talking about me. But my sound is pretty much way up.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. It was just on probably his end. And maybe when you're turning away from the mic, it's not as clear, but when you're facing.
Right. Yeah, that's what happens. I noticed there was some, fizzing around on the video um, uh, when in the bottom left hand of the screen, and I had to set up a fill light. So while I was doing that while I was doing Jayarada Madhava, so that was why I was dodging away from the mic, and then my sound, of course, cuts out then. So today's session will be about the loss of truth, why truth matters, how we came to lose it, how we can get it back. So those are the items I hope to address today to talk about. And this is a very, very interesting subject because it's becoming more and more evident to everybody that truth has kind of taken a steep dive, over the years, and hardly we know what to believe anymore. Uh, and it isn't just in one aspect, it's in a number of aspects that we've seen this kind of degradation of honesty, degradation of knowledge, degradation of straightforward dealings. It's been happening quite for a long time, and in a lot of different areas. Let's start with this here. Um, we know that Maharaj Pariksit met Kali personified, and when he met Kali personified was beating a bull, and the bull was standing on one leg only and urinating. And when Pariksit saw the Kali um, performing this atrocity, he prepared to attack Kali and kill him if necessary. But Kali instead surrendered to Maharaj Pariksit. Instead of being killed, Kali surrendered to Pariksit. And as a result, because he surrendered to Pariksit, Pariksit was obliged to give him shelter. So here is verse 1:16:4. But I think I can get it better here on this one here. I've got the wrong verse set up. Hang on a second. So, yeah, here we go. Once, when Maharaj Pariksit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Sudra, disguised as a king and herding the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. So Maharaj Pariksit was on the way to conquer the world. He saw the master of Kali Yuga, which was Kali personified, who was lower than a Shudra, disguised as a king and herding the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal him sufficient punishment. So Pariksit, being the administrative head of the world, was on the spot to deal with any problems that came up. And the fact that Kali Yuga was beginning to infiltrate the world was a problem. Of course, it wasn't that Pariksit didn't know that this was going to happen. It was spoken of in scriptures, so he was aware of it. But because of his noble and his amazing rule, he was able to hold back Kali Yuga. And Kali Yuga is actually defined in many ways by these four activities, that we see here. And what are those activities? They are meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. We see those in this picture in the background there. And when Kali surrendered to Pariksit, Pariksit was obliged to give him shelter, and then Kali pleaded for some place where he could live because he was also a resident of the kingdom that Pariksit ruled. So Pariksit allowed him to stay anywhere where there was intoxication, meat eating, gambling, or illicit sex. Intoxication, meat eating, gambling, or illicit sex. And Kali objected, saying, but my dear King Pariksit, there are no places like that in your kingdom. So Pariksit was obliged to give him one more place, a fifth place, and that is the place where gold is hoarded. So we can keep this in mind because all these things tie together. The four regular principles that we follow: we don't gamble, we don't eat meat, we don't have illicit sex, and we don't take intoxicants. And the four legs of the bull are truthfulness, austerity, mercy, and truthfulness, cleanliness, austerity, and mercy. And each one of the prohibitions that we observe, each one of them is actually tied to one of the legs of the bull. So keep that in focus too. Um, so when Kali asked the bull, this is how the bull replied, I have lost my three legs and now standing on one leg only. Are you lamenting for the state of existence, or are you in great anxiety uh, because henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial dealings, offerings rather, because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their suffering due to famine or drought? So let me look at that again on the database here. I have lost my three legs and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence, or are you in great anxiety henceforward the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you, or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their suffering due to famine and drought? So this uh, is the guest speech of the bull to the cow. And this is the plight of our age of Kali Yuga, that the meat eaters and, of course, people who are doing the other degenerate aspects of Kali Yuga will have a chance to fully manifest their material sinful desires. And as a result of manifesting their material sinful desires, the cow and the bull will both be harassed greatly in Kali Yuga. So we know that this is kind of the recipe for Kali Yuga. There is gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and illicit sex. Particularly, the cow will be slaughtered in the age of Kali Yuga. And we know gold will be hoarded. And we know that there will be a loss of cleanliness, austerity, mercy, and truthfulness. But it's said that in the previous verse we read that the bull is standing on one leg only. And surprisingly, that leg is truthfulness. But it seems like that leg too is seriously on the way out, especially in our modern Kali Yuga. We're seeing that hardly we see any remnants of truthfulness. And we understand here in Bhagavad Gita that uh, in Bhagavad Gita we find an explanation of the nature of Krishna's explanation of what the qualities of a devotee are, and these are what the Supreme Lord tells Arjuna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said: fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and for the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities of Son of Bharat belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So um, those who are divine in their nature, they have these qualities, and truthfulness is one of them. Truthfulness is not the only quality, but those who are followers of spiritual path, they are supposed to gradually become purified and manifest these qualities. They may not have them all in the very beginning. That's a whole other topic of discussion. But if they continue in spiritual life, then they will develop these qualities. And now, if we look at what are the qualities of the demoniac, uh, pravritim cha nivritim cha janana vidur asura, na socham napi cha charo, na satyam teshu vidyate. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. So that is a sure sign of those of demoniac quality. So we can see that truthfulness is tied directly to spiritual advancement. If someone is spiritually advanced, they will be truthful. All over in the Vedic literatures, we see how much, especially the kings, we see how much they were careful not to violate their own promise or to speak a falsity. They were very, very careful not to engage in any kind of false speech. Um, and we see that in a prior time, the leaders or kings during Parikit's time and before him, Yudhisthira, that the kings were upholders of truth, mercy, cleanliness, and austerity. Not only did they follow truth, mercy, cleanliness, and austerity, but they tried to see that these things were instituted in the kingdom, because we know that mercy is destroyed by animal slaughter or by meat eating. So if we eat animals, we will lose our quality of mercy. If we engage in illicit sex, we will lose our quality of cleanliness. If we engage in intoxication, we will lose our quality of austerity. And if we engage in gambling, we will lose our quality of truth. These are our four pillars of religion, and these are mirrored by the pillars of irreligion that are prominent in Kali Yuga. So when people in Kali Yuga are doing their thing, they are actually finding themselves losing these four things: truth, mercy, cleanliness, and austerity. So, this is why truth is gradually diminishing, diminishing, diminishing. So forgive me if I'm kind of rolling fast a little bit here. I kind of organize this a bit, and I want to kind of get across the bulk of it. Then I'll let you all ask some questions. But I want to move right into this next part, because if we look at our modern world, we see that these are domains where loss of truth is very evident in our modern times. We know that when we see some advertising, we know that that advertising is likely uh, pumped up. It's likely false in some ways. Every detergent claims it's the one that makes your clothes whitest. Every offer of some kind of car tells you that this car is the best possible car you could possibly ever get. For many years, the smoking industry was telling us how much smoking enhanced our lungs and how it made our health better. It's surprising that if you look at magazines like Life magazine from the 40s, um, there were advertisements in those magazines by so-called doctors who were showing which cigarette they smoked and why it was they smoked that one because it enhanced their health. Of course, we know that was all lies. Now, at least, we can sort of understand that. So, in the realm of advertising, we see lies. In politics, everywhere there are lies these days. Everyone knows that the presidents always, as we are seeing right now, promise peace and prosperity, neither of which they can actually deliver. But politics makes all kinds of unsubstantiated promises for the future. Those promises never get fulfilled. Nobody ever seems to care or notice. And again, the next term, when a new group of officials are voted into office, again, we see the same thing. We see cheating in business, right and left, that people are finding some way to get the upper hand to cheat another person in business. We see between husband and wife, there's infidelity, there's hiding, there's cheating, there is domestic violence. There are all these things which show that in the age of Kali Yuga, the relationship between the man and the woman in marriage has degenerated. We see in academia, the colleges and the centers of learning, they're teaching things which are obviously false. At the same time, they are defending things which are very weak kinds of socio-political theories, and everyone has to, at least to get a grade, they have to, play by the rules. And we see people are scamming the colleges. Recently, there was a scam about some family who was using some bribe system to get people into famous major colleges. Uh, in I say new media, but I mean it should be news media. In the news media, we see that the advent of fake news has become an enormous thing in our world. That now, when we see something, we barely know whether it's true or not. And this is starting to become a big problem that we can't judge anymore very easily whether what we see is actually a factual representation of the real events that are happening or the real situation as it is, particularly the use of statistics in a fraudulent way, the one-sided explanation of the events as they happen from one point of view and not the other. We see that in general, the news media is owned by major corporations, and what gets shown on the news has to be favorable to the major corporations or it won't be shown. And of course, right now, who could forget our whole thing with BLM and law enforcement? There's so much cheating in law enforcement that uh, are people really being protected? And it looks like they're not. And the police are being used more as a political control mechanism than their original purpose to protect the citizens from illegal dealings. Of course, in the legal system, everyone knows well that the lawyers say whatever they need to say to try to win the uh, case that they're proposing. I always like the way that Indian people say the word liar. He's a liar. Of course, they're just mispronouncing lawyer, but actually it comes close to what, generally speaking, lawyers almost generally are forced to do to preserve their occupation. Of course, now in sporting competitions, we're seeing this more and more with the doping, and various things. The former Soviet Union has lost their ability to compete because of their breaches of these things. People who were once great bicyclists or people who were great swimmers have been banned because of their inability to say the truth, that they're not using various stimulants and uh, performance enhancing medical chemicals to be able to keep their lead, to make them somehow or other win over the competition. So this is quite amazing that in every aspect of our human life, we have gradually seen a downturn, a loss in, this facility of truthfulness. So this is something that's a direct result of the age of Kali Yuga coming to fruit or fruition. It's becoming more and more a direct result of how Kali Yuga has misled us, how Kali Yuga has pushed us into the situation that we are now, where we really are bewildered on all sides. As it says in Bhagavatam in the 12th canto, that the citizens will be like ants on a log with a fire at both ends. So if you can imagine being an ant on a log and it was on fire on both sides of the log, that's kind of how we feel these days. I thought that I would do kind of a Academy Awards or a great moments of people who are especially known for their contribution to the loss of what to trust. And we can see that three of these people on this list are U.S. presidents. So far from Prickett, we see that these are situations and people who did their little bit in the time that they were caught in the public eye to make us all feel that what's next, what will go down next. Most of you probably never heard of Edward Bernays, but Edward Bernays is a very interesting figure. What makes him important or interesting is that Edward Bernays was the first person to really research and think about propaganda, what it is, how to do it. Edward Bernays was a psychologist, I believe, and he was related to Sigmund Freud in some type of way, I think. And he studied how people think, especially how masses of people think. And he wrote about it a lot, about how to influence people without them realizing that they were being influenced. That was the key for propaganda, because anybody can put out a thing that says you should do this or this is the best thing. But if propaganda is very overt and very simple, then it tends not to be effective. And that's why propaganda these days is never like that. Never just slaps you in the face and says, this is the best thing, you should do this. If you don't, you're an idiot. However, there are all kinds of sneaky techniques. And Edward Bernays is well known because he was um, carefully studied by Hitler. The Rockefellers also took him very serious. In fact, he was employed by the Rockefellers. And when they were, brutalizing and pushing people around to get their oil monopoly that they needed and to be able to drill in places where there were, Indians that lived there, or where there were places where the people who were working for them needed some lift in salary or some normal working conditions. It was Edward Bernays who went to work for the Rockefellers to be able to whitewash their image in the public eye. He knew how to do this. Edward Bernays was the one we can thank for making it popular for women to smoke cigarettes. There was a time in America where men were smoking like smokestacks and dying right and left, but everyone felt that it was not ladylike to smoke. So how did Edward Bernays do it? He rode on the coattails of the, suffragette movement. And as women were getting the vote, they were learning how to smoke too. So now women are able to die right alongside men with, black lung and all this good stuff. So it was the mercy and wisdom of Edward Bernays who brought all these things to us. He had a lot to do with a lot of things, the way advertisement is done these days on the news media, on television. He's the man. He's the guy who figured out how to soft soap and hard and soft sell, how to bamboozle, finagle, and browbeat people into doing things that they normally would not do because he was so gifted at it. So we have to give a shout out here to the loss of truth to Edward Bernays. Of course, let's look at some of our other illustrious people who are helping very much in Kali Yuga. Of course, Donald Trump, everybody knows. Everything is fake news if it's against him. And he's fast and loose with the truth. The media tried to run one around him, but they lost their credibility in the effort to try to push Donald Trump into the background. So the media now is not trustable. And we have this whole thing with is Russia, and probably is, they have been for a long time, uh, fiddling with the news in various ways. They did it for centuries. They were the first ones to really employ some of Edward Bernays' tactics in a large scale, and they came up with ones on their own. And so they are behind the scenes creating these internet movements like astroturfing, where they pretend to be common concerned citizens, all collectively voicing their negative opinion about something, when actually it's just a, MIDI, a uh, server farm and nothing else. You know, the servers are all tied together, coming from different places, and one person's putting out what seems to be like a whole groundswell of people. So this is how we are losing truth. Of course, who could forget Enron? How they lied and tried to get money in all sorts of illegal and unethical ways. And of course, the subprime loan bubble that we just witnessed burst. You know, here's another great moment in the loss of truth where, you know, Lehman Brothers and so many others decided to play fast and loose with refinancing, and sold a bunch of basically garbage loans that would never and could never be likely repaid, and then caused the entire financial market to bottom out. And of course, they lost out, but everybody else did okay. And everyone was bailed out by the government. Thank you, government. You are definitely saving us. So we are so happy that you have saved us. And at least you saved the other banks and the other lenders. So thank you for that, our government. You didn't help the common people, but at least you saved the big guys from their subprime loan bubble. Of course, Hitler once said that he who speaks the loudest and the longest is understood to have won any debate. So this was a tactic that he used consistently. And all throughout the Second World War, he would make one promise and then turn around. You know, he made he made a commitment with the Russians, and then he stabbed them in the back. He said he would never do this, and then he did that. He said he would never take this country, and then again he did it. And all the way along, you know, he was saying whatever he needed to say to bamboozle people in the moment, and then he did what he was going to do. And of course, as I said, he was a student of Edward Bernays, so he started the first large scale propaganda. He was the first on the block to do that, the first guy who understood that propaganda was the tool of the 20th century. So when they first came up with the radio, you know, we weren't alive then, but when the first radio was designed by Marconi and gradually manufactured in such a way that it was cheap enough, Hitler had many little radios made and distributed all over Germany, but the only thing you could hear was Nazi propaganda on the radio. So this was how he made sure that every house was able to not miss out on his particular way of, putting forward various lies. And looking further at our, hall of fame here of how our world of truth got destroyed, we can offer our hat and respect to Richard Nixon, one of the first U.S. presidents to be caught in a massive lie about uh, unethically trying to handicap his competition in an election. And finally, he was driven out of office. Henry Kissinger, uh, who did much foreign policy and did many of the things which got the Middle East in the situation we see it today by pledging one thing and doing another, by lying about what one side thought to another side. And now we see the world as it is. And we have the fact that he was able to double deal and lie behind others' backs to thank for that situation that we're in today. Each one of these individuals has contributed their little bit to the common mud ball that we all live in today, where no one can trust anything. Who could forget Bernie Madoff and his Ponzi scheme, selling things and actually um, ripping off some $60 billion or something like that, some ridiculous amount of money, more money than most of us would see in 20 lifetimes. And, he somehow or other was able to go on with it until it all crashed, In the, world of medicine, Elizabeth Holmes and her Theranos corporation, which was supposed to uh, do some kind of blood testing in a simple machine, but it never was practical. But she lied about it, and it went on and on and on until finally the lie was caught, and she was, ousted, and I think she had to even face some legal consequences. I don't remember that case right now, the details. But here in medicine, where people's lives matter, we see that people are cheating, and they don't care if there's a dollar to be made; they'll make it. And finally, of course, Bill Clinton. Who could forget Bill Clinton, who was the first to go down with a extramarital long-term relationship during his presidency, where you expect, again, he's not a pricket. Richard Nixon was not a pricket, and Donald Trump's not a pricket. So these people are not what they don't have the qualities that actually people who are leaders should have. These are people who have their own particular material desires. Some of them are worse than others. Some of them are just uh, more or less people who can't tell the truth, whereas others were serious fraudsters, which tried to bilk people for money that wasn't rightly theirs by various schemes. So now here we are. This is us, us Kali Yuga babies. We are here and we're sitting in the middle of this nice mess that has been centuries in the making since Prickett left. Then Kali Yuga came in. And as Kali came in, then gradually one by one, he overtook first the Brahmanas with Shringi. He corrupted them. Then he corrupted the Kshatriyas, and Parasuram had to kill them 21 times over, and then they kept getting more and more corrupt. Then he corrupted the Vaishyas and essentially everyone else. So first, the spiritual knowledge was covered over. Then the political knowledge of how to run a state was covered over. Then eventually, how to succeed in business without cheating was covered over. And then literally the sutras are left in the dark because none of the three other groups have any idea what they're supposed to be doing. So if they don't, then certainly the Sudras don't. So most of us in Kali Yuga were born Sudras, and many people in Kali Yuga will remain Sudras their whole lives, regardless of what birth they took from what family. But it's our important work to rise above, to somehow move beyond this mess. And before I start talking about what we can do about it, now at this point, uh, I want to ask, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions about some of this presentation that I've been making so
Question
far?
in the chat box, Maharaj, if you can see the chat.
Okay, let me take a look at it. So everybody keeps themselves muted, and the way
Um,
you do it is chat.
we typically, but devotees also ask on the microphone. It's also fine.
Okay, let me see if I can read it. I have to kind of
I
get
can read it out
closer.
loud if you like. It is from
Uh,
Athena. She says,
okay.
what criteria was used to measure, quote unquote, contributions to loss of truth? And may I ask how you define the truth? Thank you.
Hmm. What criterion was used to measure it?
Yeah, to measure this
Okay,
contribution.
now that's a really good and sensible question. Um, I'm speaking at the 30,000 foot level here. um, if we really wanted to do a demographic or social projection, then we would have to start talking nuts and bolts and get into statistics. But in general, most of us have this sense of untrustability. Of course, in Kali Yuga, it's not like a politician telling lies is a new thing. It didn't start with Donald Trump for sure. It's certainly been around since day one. What's interesting, though, is how uh, constant and how trivial some of the misrepresentations are these days. That people lie about even minor things. So, truth generally uh, is an interesting subject or an interesting abstract noun. What it means, at least philosophically speaking, is uh, JTB is usually the way it's described in philosophical terms. And JTB stands for justified true belief, So if something is justified and true and it's a belief, then it's true. So generally, truth is related to uh, the one-on-one correspondence between some understanding of a verbal proposition and the corresponding actuality of a situation that exists in the external world. Generally, that's how we categorize truth in more of abstract terms. So we have the external world, which we all perceive with our senses, and then we have our ability to communicate in an abstraction of language. And through that abstraction of language, when we communicate, we are either painting an accurate picture of that external way things are in the world, or we're painting an inaccurate picture of it. In some cases, we're painting a picture of what it once was, and in some cases, we're painting a picture of the way the world will be. Or in some cases, we're painting a picture of those things which we can never directly know, like what's going on inside the emotion or heart or thinking of an individual. Those are things we can never directly know. But if the individual claims a certain kind of thing about what they say, think, or do, or feel, then generally speaking, that's the only way we can know it. But sometimes we discover that their external behavior does not line up with their portrayal of what they think, hear, feel, and know. It's a different story being told there. So, in general, I would say truth is this one-to-one correspondence between a situation in the world and a portrayal of it, either in symbols, in writing, or in human language or some other communicational pipeline. Of course, that's oversimplified. When you deal with these things in a real, more technical way, you begin to see there's all kinds of nuances there. So I don't want to get into it any more than that. But I would say that what we are seeing now is that lies are becoming more and more rampant, and even about things that are even highly trivial. Whereas at one point, for someone to lie and be thought of as a liar or to come out as a liar was something that could cause you to have loss of reputation in society. But now there's no longer that stigma so much. So people really are not so hesitant to say anything and everything. Of course, as you raise the issue, if we were to do this in a more, you know, qualified way, in a more researched way, then we would have to start talking about psychological definitions for various ideas, and we would have to start dealing with statistics. But maybe that was your question. So that's how I'd respond to that question. But it does bring up another side to this whole thing that we're discussing today.
Okay. Um, so Mara, would you like to continue, or would you take another question?
I can take another question.
Okay, there's another question from
By the
Gaurav.
way, how much time do I have?
We do like to end around 9 o'clock, maybe another 10 minutes, 9:05.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So this question is, do you see this loss of truth increasing in the coming decades? How do you reconcile this with how truthfulness being the last leg of religion? How
Yeah.
long will some of the truth exist? And that, I guess, related question, how to get it back? Some other Vegavati, how to
Right.
get it back?
That was the next part of my segment. So I'll use this question to segue into the last part of my presentation. There's an interesting quote that's made by um, a media journalist who was at one time a Episcopalian minister, and his name is I forget Chris. I can't think of his last name now. Hedges, I think it is, Chris Hedges, and he said, "We live in interesting times. We live in times where lawyers destroy truth, where the educational system destroys knowledge, doctors destroy health, the media destroys truth, uh, religion destroys virtue, and the government destroys freedom." So it's kind of hearkening back to, the Orwellian idea of the ministry of peace was actually about war. The ministry of 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 love was actually about hate, and we see that the main um, feature of many occupations, the main crux of what the occupation is made to protect, is the very thing that that occupation is sabotaging. And this is the world that we live in. And this appears to be increasing. It's hard to say what will come in the future. The idea we understand is that due to the distribution of the holy name, at some point, there will be a resurgence of purification or purity, at least among some percentage of the population. How big a percentage that will be, we don't know. But even if there's a resurgence of commitment to spiritual life, particularly the chanting of the Lord's holy name, then it will have an impact on the entire rest of the world. Just as these few people that we had our, awards ceremony for, the people who brought us down the slippery path to a world of disbelief, uh, by people doing the opposite thing, by people engaging in chanting of the holy name, the trend towards, you know, um, materialism, the trend towards the lying and cheating propensity will diminish. So my next and last slide here is kind of, you know, these are ways that we could be very strong in trying to um, implement to stay away from the uh, destruction completely of truth. So if we chant the holy names, if we engage in devotional service, and of course, if we avoid the four pillars of sinful life. And these things are our commitment that we make when we become initiated as a devotee. We pledge to chant 16 rounds. We pledge to engage in devotional service. We pledge to avoid meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. These things in themselves would certainly at least keep an individual from going down the road to becoming untrustworthy, a general liar and a general person with bad character. Just these things, because as we said, Kali needed to come into Kali Yuga. And Kali is particularly strong where there's illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating. And if those are curbed, those qualities or those activities are curbed by at least a certain group of population, then overall our entire world will be better by that. And just a small percentage, Prabhupada said that, it doesn't take a 51% or something, but a small percentage of the population becomes directed towards true Krishna consciousness, that will have its impact on the entire world. Why do people lie? Why is truthfulness going down? Why do people feel the need to misrepresent the situation that is around them? Why do they do that? Well, the answer is simple. They have some material desire that they want to have met, and either they don't want others to know about that material desire, or they want to get an advantage on the resources to fulfill that material desire, or they feel like they want to mislead others from understanding how that material desire will be satisfied so they will better themselves. So we see that basically falsity is generated by uh, the urging, the pushing of material desires. So if people don't have material desires, there's not much need to tell false things about anything. We're not trying to get a lot of material desires, so why do we need to falsify something? We're not trying to hide something, so why do we need to falsify something? We're not trying to compete with somebody for some kind of resource, so why do we need to falsify something? All the urge and necessity for lies and untruth, they all stem from the need to fulfill some material desire, to have some reputation, to have some standing, to have some resource for material sense gratification. All right. So this is the kind of back end here. Um, any questions, comments? Did we answer all the questions in the chat, or there's more of them?
Yeah, I think there might be a couple more, but I think we're almost out of time.
Okay. You tell me.
Yeah. Untitled Prabhu put a quote up here. Similarly, we do not expect that the whole population of human society will be taken to this Brahminical culture, but even if 1% of the whole population accepts this Brahminical culture, Krishna consciousness in the whole world will be peaceful. Not even 1%, less than 1%. It is so nice. The letter from Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, that's what I thought I had that, you know. Actually, there's an interesting section in the very opening of the Kalki Upanishad. So, of the Kalki Purana, not Kalki Upanishad, but Kalki Purana. So, in that, it gives the whole genealogical table of Kali, you know, of how, you know, one thing is born from another. I wish I had, I remembered it in detail, but it shows where truth and falsity are born from parents. So it kind of gives us, by a genealogical table, a descending of, you know, a metaphor of what is cause and what is effect in the world as negative things begin to evolve and become more pronounced. One thing begets a higher phenomenon, or another phenomenon, which is a secondary or caused phenomenon.
So thank you very much, Maharaj. It's pretty much all the time we have for this evening.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you coming on this channel again, and we hope to have you again, you know, to maybe continue this conversation or start a new one. We always look forward to hearing from you. And
Okay.
And I just wanted to make a couple announcements, and then what we typically do is we let everybody say a quick Hari Bol and a thank you to Maharaj. This is one of our traditions. I think it's quite nice. So if you can just hang around for 1 minute or two. Just going to make a couple of quick announcements. So we've been having this for a while, these spiritual programs. Oh, sorry. Oh, this is the wrong one. This is the wrong slide. Sorry. I'm going to stop my share. Wanted to put the right slide, which would be nice to show. Let me stop the share. Excuse me. So we have upcoming speakers. All right, sorry about that. We have upcoming speakers Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj on this channel on the second canto. He's also on the channel right now as one of the guests hearing. So Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj is here. And then we also have on Saturday evening, His Grace Gauranga Prabhu, who's going to be talking about the 5 keys of independence. And then that'll be a joint program with ISKCON of Round Rock in Texas, but it's going to be on the same channel. And then Sunday evening at the same time, 8 p.m., we'll have His Grace Gaur Kumar Prabhu. So Gaur Kumar Prabhu is also one of the guests tonight. And for those of you who do not know Gaur Kumar Prabhu, he's actually very learned. He's a professor and the chair of the computer science department at City University of New York, a very deeply learned devotee, a scholar, and he's also the president of the 26 Second Avenue Temple. 26 Second Avenue being the first ISKCON center in the world. So be sure to join that. And the topic that he's going to be presenting on Sunday evening is, you know, on the Bhagavad Gita. How did Arjuna win the war? Was it through knowledge of the Gita? Was it through Gandiva? You know, it was a very intriguing topic. So please try to join for that. I think you'll really like it. And of course, next week, we have a full week of Krishna Conscious programs, 7 nights a week. So please join for that. And we look forward to seeing you again, Maharaj. We will definitely let you know which dates we can work with you. And we will you know, enrich the program further. So I'd like to also, again, thank His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj for joining us. And I would like to request Neelmani Prabhu, our temple president, to say a quick word of thanks, and then we can open it up.
Hare Krishna, Chandrasekhara Maharaj.
Hari Bol.
Dandavat pranams. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
We haven't seen you for quite some time, but it's nice to see you as
Yeah, I
always.
know. I
It's
haven't been on
wonderful.
the other side of that little trickle of water for a while.
Yeah.
New
So-
Jersey and New York are competing
so-
for who's got the most COVIDs.
But thank you, Maharaj, for a very lively class, and it was like back to fundamentals of trying to really understand how the world is working around us in this Kali Yuga time frame. So that was very nice perspective and a nice way to think about things, and it was so enlightening. It was kind of a depressing class till the end when you said, Maharaj, at least with 1% of devotees, the whole world can be changed. So that was nice to hear from you about that. Otherwise, there didn't seem much hope. You know? Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, all the devotees, for joining.
Hare Bol. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Bol, Maharaj.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna
you.
Maharaj, Dandavad.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
Maharaj. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna.
Oh,
I told you I told you I didn't enjoy your class, I'd be lying.
Hare Bol, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Bol.
Dandavad Maharaj.
Hare Bol. Thank you all very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj,
And
Vrindavan
till
Chandra.
we meet again. Happy trails.
It was very wonderful.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Maharaj, so much. Wonderful class.
Thank you, Maharaj, Chandrasekhara Maharaj. Thank you
Hare-
for your education.
Thank you
Hare
for your
Maharaj.
encouragement.
Thanking you
Hare
too
Bol.
much.
Thank you, Chandrasekhara Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol Jai. Wait, I see you there.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.